Hi, I'm Christina and I make vegan family meals. And today we're gonna make a roasted tomato soup and a beet and spinach salad. And this is something that is a good lunch option or a light dinner option as well. And I decided to do a roasted tomato soup because there's a really funny story about it. There was one time this summer where I thought I had ordered 6 tomatoes in one of the very popular online delivery grocery services, and I ended up getting 6 bags of tomatoes, and I was like, what am I gonna do with all these tomatoes, right? And so when life gives you tomatoes, you make tomato soup. So I'm gonna replicate what I did that week that I got all those tomatoes. I'm gonna start with the beets, and I put down like a plastic cutting board for this because the beets can sometimes stain the wooden boards. So I'll start chopping the beets, and I'm gonna try to do them in thin slices because they're for a salad. I don't want them too chunky, right? And they'll cook a little bit faster if they're thinner. So I'm gonna slice those and then put them on a sheet pan. Okay, so I finished chopping the beets, and we had red and golden beets for some nice color here. So I'm gonna add, before I put these in the oven, I'm gonna add about half a tablespoon of olive oil. Just about half, and I'm gonna drizzle that on here. Now I'll mix them all up here in a second, but half a tablespoon. And then I'm just going to do salt and pepper. Salt and pepper. So just very simple seasoning on the beef. Okay, so I'm gonna put these in the oven at 425 for about 20 minutes. Until they start getting a little bit brown and toasty. And so I'll do that now. Okay, so now that the beets are in the oven for the salad, I don't mind if I have to pull that out in a, before I get the tomatoes in there, because those can be room temperature or cold for the salad, it doesn't matter. So I'm gonna start chopping everything for the tomato soup. And for that, I will use probably about a half. This is a pretty large onion, but if you have a smaller onion, you can use a small onion or half of this like large onion. And the onion will kind of give it a nice background flavor. If you don't like onion, you definitely don't have to use this much, but I think a little bit of onion in there is good. And then I'm also mixing tomatoes. Remember, I have some vine tomatoes there, and then I have some heirloom tomatoes. I probably have about a dozen vine tomatoes and 4 heirloom tomatoes of varying sizes. I'm gonna try to fill the sheet pan as much as I can on there with those and see if that's enough or not, or if that's a good size. I've made smaller portions of this before with less, but since this is for the 4 of us tonight, we'll kind of see how that goes. And I'm just doing a rough chop for the onion. Everything's gonna get blended in for the soup, so it's okay if it's kind of rough chop. But I do want things that are kind of the same size for roasting in the oven. So here's my onion. And then the tomatoes, I'm just gonna give them a rough chop as well. Okay, so I finished chopping up the majority of the tomatoes. Some of those heirloom tomatoes were really huge, so I didn't need all of them to fill the pan. And then I did have a green heirloom tomato in there, and so it's, you know, it'll blend in fine. It's mainly red. Okay, so that was a half of onion, you know, all the tomatoes to fill the pan. And then I'm gonna add probably around 8 cloves of garlic in there and nestle them in between. I'm just going to pop them out of here, and then I won't chop them or anything. I'm just gonna kind of smash and put in there. Okay, so I popped out the garlics. They're all in there as well. So we got the tomato, the onion, and the garlic all in the pan. And so now I'm gonna add the oil and the seasonings. Remember, if you want to leave out the oil, you can totally do that. I'm gonna add probably, let me see, I'm gonna add 2 because there's a lot of tomatoes here. Again, you can totally leave this out if you're trying to do whole food plant-based. Okay, so that's our 2 tablespoons of oil. And then I'm gonna add salt. Pepper. So now is a good time to season before it gets, while we're roasting. But then later when we blend up the soup, we can also taste again if we need to add any more seasoning to it there. Garlic granules. And I would be very generous. This is probably like a tablespoon or more of garlic granules. I know we already have garlic in there, but you can never have enough garlic, right? Onion granules. Of course, we have onion in there, but this will also add to it. Again, maybe not even a tablespoon. And then if you have an Italian seasoning, I would throw in an Italian seasoning. I don't, so I'm gonna just use oregano and basil as kind of my Italian herbs in here. So here is the oregano. A tablespoon probably is a good measurement of that. Basil. Again, a tablespoon is probably good. Now remember, you can always add more seasoning while you're blending. I'm gonna add a little bit of chili flake to make it a little bit hot. You can totally leave this out. It's not gonna add that much heat, but just, you know, kind of that little bit of spice in the background. So not even a tablespoon. I would probably say like maybe half, and then, you know, we can always add to our own soup later if we want to. And then I'm going to kind of work this all in together, and then I'll put it in the oven. My oven is already at 425 for the beets, so this can probably go in about 30 minutes in there. If you notice your tomatoes kind of getting roasted before then, you can always pull them out sooner. All that bits or like or roasting is just going to add more flavor, so it doesn't hurt it.
Yep.
Okay, so I took the beets out of the oven after 20 minutes, and they're pretty much done. I'm gonna let them cool down until we're ready for the salad later. It's no harm done, they're fine. Right now, while our tomatoes are roasting, I'll go ahead and make the dressing for the salad. And normally I would send the kids or my husband out to grab some lettuce or some greens from our garden, but it's a little bit chilly today and damp, wet. So I always have spinach on hand, even if it's like the box spinach. So I just grabbed like probably 4 or 5 cups of spinach from there, and I use that for the salad instead. So I try to keep the dressings super simple, and a lot of my dressings are oil-free, no oil involved. And so this one is literally just like lemon, Dijon mustard, and maple syrup. And that's how you can do the same kind of formula with a different acid. If you like balsamic dressing instead, you can do the balsamic, a couple of tablespoons of balsamic with the Dijon mustard and the maple syrup. But this time I'm gonna use lemon. You can also use lime or whatever. And so I'm gonna start with one. Let's see how much juice I can get out of this lemon. This is a pretty big lemon, so probably gonna start with about 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. And if you have a lemon juicer, that might help you do this easier than how I'm doing it. Okay, so that's about 2 tablespoons of lemon juice there. And then I'm gonna add about a tablespoon of the Dijon mustard. Any kind of Dijon, doesn't matter, can work here. About 1 tablespoon of that and about 1 tablespoon of maple syrup. And then I just add a little bit of salt and pepper, and then I will whisk that together and then taste it to see how that is. So let me kind of whisk that together here. Kind of like a honey, maybe it was kind of like a honey mustard taste to it. And you'd be surprised like how little dressing you need. You don't really need a lot of dressing for even that much greens. You just want to lightly coat the greens, you know. So let me keep whisking that together here. But that actually is pretty good. I like my dressings a little bit tart. If it's too tart, you can add a little bit more maple syrup. If it's too sweet, you can add a little bit more acid or a little bit of mustard to it. I'm gonna add just a little bit of salt here and give it one more mix. Okay, so I'm gonna put the salad together now. Let me grab the beets that have been cooling down back there so that we can put them in the spinach. Okay, so here's our beets. They might not look that pretty, but they're thinly sliced and they're cooked. So let's add them to the spinach here. And that adds like really nice purple and gold color to the spinach. So we have our beets, our spinach, and I'm going to put our Dijon lemon maple dressing over that. And then I would just give it a little bit of a toss. Let me push this out of the way real quick. And then I'm just gonna toss it up. I don't wanna hurt the beets too much, so I'm gonna just toss that gently in there. I'm going to add some croutons that I made earlier today. So I mentioned a few things that we had left over from the farmer's market last weekend. And so we had like a quarter of a loaf of sourdough that was getting stale. So this morning I just cubed it up, all of it, like, you know, maybe 1/2 inch cubes, and to put it in the oven at 425 for literally just like 10 minutes. I sprinkled it with some of the Italian seasonings I mentioned earlier, salt and pepper, and a tiny bit of olive oil. And then just within 10 minutes I had croutons from those like sourdough, from that sourdough loaf. Okay, so I just took our tomatoes out of the oven. They are steaming, piping hot here. It may not look pretty, but it smells really good. And I kind of crammed my pan with tomatoes. So there's still a little bit of liquid in there. That's totally fine. It's all gonna get blended and taste good anyway. So I'm gonna scoop all this into my blender here, and then I will blend it up. Okay, so I scooped everything into the blender. You can see it's steaming hot. It smells very like herby Italian seasoning, so it smells good, and like lots of garlic. I only used tomatoes today, but I have done this soup with I've added red peppers to it in the past too, and it gives it a little bit more, I don't know, pepper taste to it, but it maintains the color, it stays red, and it's also like super good too. So you can do that as well. And so I'm gonna blend it up here. You see it's really hot, so you wanna make sure you take off like the top of your blender, or else it'll probably like overheat. Like continue to let that steam escape from here. So I'm gonna blend it. It's really juicy already, so I don't need to over blend it too much. Well, it helps if I turn it on first. Okay, so I finished blending our tomato soup, and you can see mine came out a little bit orange red. It really depends on how ripe your tomatoes are and how red they are. It's gonna still taste good either way. So I'm gonna pour this in here. Remember, this was our lunch portion. If you wanted to do a dinner portion of this soup, you probably double the size, so maybe 2 sheet pans full of tomatoes. So to plate this up, I would, have a salad portion and have some of our tomato soup. And then because I have these croutons already, I'm gonna add just a couple croutons to the top of that. And there you have it, our lunchtime vegan tomato soup with beet spinach salad. So thanks for watching our video today. I hope you enjoyed it. Our simple tomato soup and beet and spinach salad that would work nicely on a weekend or for brunch or lunch sometime. If you like this video, please don't forget to like it and also to subscribe to our channel. Until next time, I'm Christina with Vegan Family Meals. Thank you.